1 Minute Magic. Steve stood behind the stage, speaking softly to the audiovisual technician through his headset. He was again the co-producer of this year's Advertising Awards program. The Master of Ceremonies announced the next category: Best of Show for Overall Advertising Campaign. As the 5 finalists were read, Steve peeked out at the audience. Rhonda and Grant were sitting in the 3rd row, with Roger from United Bank. Steve hoped they wouldn't be too disappointed. The MC opened the envelope. "The winner is," he paused, "Irma's Italian Eateries." A whoop went up from the crowd as the names of the creative team and ad agency were announced. Steve watched Rhonda reach over and give Roger a consoling pat on the arm. Just wait, he thought. The MC handed out the triangular-shaped crystal trophies and waited for the applause to die down before making the next announcement. This year, the panel of judges added a new category: the Judges Award for Best of Show Among New Advertisers, and that award goes to United Bank. Steve watched Roger jump up from his seat and grab Grant by the shoulders. Steve laughed out loud at seeing the staid bank president so animated. Roger had turned out to be an ideal client. As the MC recognized creative advertising in the United Bank team, Steve found himself happier for the others than for himself. Peter for the art direction, Alexa for copywriting, Meryl for media buying, Jude for production, Grant as junior account executive, and Steve as account executive. The proud mama look on Rhonda's face was priceless. The 9 months since Rhonda and Steve met at Irma's Eatery had been intense. It was only fitting that the restaurant chain should win the big award, and that creative advertising should win the surprise award of the evening. Steve was grateful to Rhonda and his team, but also to his 2 best collaborators for success, Blair and Kayla. Blair had grown from girlfriend to wife, and from struggling runner to marathoner, trusting the situational leadership 2 model to help her master long-distance running and their new marriage. Steve continued to be mentored by Kayla, though not as frequently as in the beginning. Steve felt a pang of sadness. There was no Kayla sighting this night. He had become used to his favourite magician popping up at the strangest yet most appropriate times. Steve tied up his loose ends backstage, thanked the MC for a job well done, and joined the small group of people still chatting in the lobby. They broke into applause as he walked in. There were bear hugs and pats on the back from co-workers, colleagues, friends, and of course, Blair. Suddenly, Steve felt a tug at his arm. It was Rhonda. Pulling him aside, she cupped her hand over his ear and whispered, "Meet me in my office first thing Monday morning." She smiled and was off. On Monday, Steve greeted Phyllis, who was now his secretary, as well as Rhonda's. "The boss wants to see me. Any idea why?" Smiling her Mona Lisa smile, Phyllis refused to divulge anything. Hearing Steve's voice, Rhonda came out to usher him into her office. "Steve," she said as she shut the door, "I ran an idea past Roger, and he's in agreement pending your input. I want to pull you off United Bank and promote Grant to account executive." Steve didn't respond, hoping there was more to the story. Rhonda took it as a sign to continue. "I want to promote you to head of the new business development department. If we land an account that is especially attractive to you, you have the option to take it on as account executive. What do you think?" Steve processed the news for a moment before saying, "The idea intrigues me. My concern is that I'd leave the position where I'm at the self-reliant achiever D4 stage on most of my goals for a position where I'm at the enthusiastic beginner D1 stage on almost every goal. It's not only a new position for me, but for the agency." "That's why we want you," Rhonda said emphatically. "The role needs someone who will shape it, someone who will challenge the assumed constraint that it's never been done before. Someone who will activate points of power to draw upon resources such as me and my partners who have been responsible for new business since we started the company. Someone who knows how to get the direction and support they need to succeed in the role." Steve was flattered, especially after Rhonda alluded to salary and benefit increases. Still, not motivated by money, power, or status, and never one to make snap decisions, Steve told Rhonda he'd give her an answer the next day. Steve would talk it over with Blair, but he also felt honour-bound to share the decision with his mentor. Steve parked directly in front of Kayla's cafe. It had been weeks since he'd had a chance to visit her and sip a mocha. The familiar door chime announced his arrival. He checked out their regular table and, to his surprise, saw Kayla sitting with a jovial-looking fellow who seemed somehow vaguely familiar. When Kayla spotted Steve, she smiled and waved. "Come here," she called. "I have someone I'd like you to meet." Steve walked over and extended his hand to the familiar stranger. "Hi, I'm Steve," he said. The man gave Steve an earnest handshake. "Pleased to meet you, Steve. I'm the one and only 1-Minute Manager," Kayla chimed in. "This is the guy who taught me everything I know about the magic of self-leadership." Steve's face lit up. "Wow, it's great to meet you," he said. "I can't tell you how much your teaching has changed my life for the better." The 1-Minute Manager smiled humbly. "I feel as though I know you. Kayla has told me all about you. You should feel very proud." Steve smiled. "When I tell her the latest good news, Kayla's the one who's going to feel proud. I also need her advice about an offer my boss made me. But wait, I'm interrupting you. I'll be glad to come back later." "Ha!" The 1-Minute Manager let out a hearty laugh. "How can you refuse him, Kayla?" He used the "I need" phrase. Kayla laughed and signaled Steve to sit down. Steve told them about the United Bank's win at the Ad Awards program and his pride for his new team success. Then he outlined his new job opportunity. "Congratulations, Steve." Kayla turned to the 1-Minute Manager and said, "I guess it's time." "Time for what?" Steve asked apprehensively. "To let you go," Kayla responded. Steve looked to her, then to the 1-Minute Manager for an explanation. "Steve," he said, "the beauty of developing a self-leader is that it ultimately frees managers to focus their attention where it's most needed. Kayla's job was to teach you how to be a self-leader. She accomplished her goal. It's time she turned her attention to others who need her." "But I'm not at the self-reliant achiever level on anything. I still need direction and support," Steve protested. "You may not be at the self-reliant achiever level on many of the goals and tasks required in your new job opportunity," the 1-Minute Manager said firmly. "But you've mastered the 3 tricks of self-leadership. Self-leaders challenge and assume constraints, activate their points of power, and are proactive about getting what they need to succeed. Just continue to practice the tricks and you'll manage yourself to success." "There are other would-be self-leaders who need Kayla now," he said. The cafe door burst open and a gaggle of children rushed in, heading straight for Kayla's magic corner. "Uh-oh," Kayla said as she jumped from her chair. "Showtime." "Kayla," Steve said as he grabbed her elbow, "before you go, how can I thank you? How can I ever repay you for your help?" "Just be yourself," Kayla responded. Before Steve could say more, Kayla was in front of the eager children, perched on her stool, looking intently at each one of them as she gained their attention. In her rich voice, she said, "My name is Kayla, and I am a magician." When the applause subsided, Kayla glanced at Steve as she asked the spellbound children, "Do you believe in magic?" Steve smiled. "What do you know? I do believe in magic," he thought. At that moment, he felt a tap on his shoulder. "Good on you," the 1-Minute Manager whispered into his ear. "You'll make a fine magician." "What do you mean?" Steve whispered back. The 1-Minute Manager simply pointed to a forlorn-looking woman sitting alone at a table. With her faraway stare, she looked as Steve must have looked when he first met Kayla. The 1-Minute Manager winked and rose from his seat, heading for the exit. As he watched the 1-Minute Manager disappear through the door, Steve suddenly knew how he would thank Kayla. He wouldn't do it by repaying her directly. He would thank her by carrying on the legacy of the 1-Minute Manager and teach others the magic of self-leadership.